it was something about camp. Oh, what was the hardest thing that you ever had to do as a manager, like physically or mentally? Like, I know, how many times did you burn the prairie? Like, was that?
How many times what?
Burn the back prairie? Have you done that? Was that the hardest thing? Or like logistically, or what was the hardest job that you had to do as camp manager, either of you?
I think for me, in this one over 15 months, Patrick, in 79 and 80, when we were remodeling the double cabin and making the retreat lodge, we worked all summer of 79, and I didn't spend very much time doing managerial things. He did a lot of it. Ray Masterson up here was the first place that he was the head honcho on the job, and we had volunteers working. And every day we worked on it. When camp was over, we kept working up until Columbus Day, after school. And finally we said we have to quit and catch up on some of our own activities. And then a farmer friend of ours from Polo, he was a carpenter and farmer, he said, when I get my corn picked, if you get volunteers to come over a day a week, I'll come over and supervise activities in the construction during the wintertime. Pretty soon we had workers 2 days a week. People poured in. Came summer, we worked again all summer. And finally in September, we completed the project, 15 months and 4,000 hours of volunteer labor, and had the result of the retreat lodge. I think time-wise, effort-wise, Patrick, where we are.
Right.
That was probably the most difficult time because of working with so many different people in the time frame and trying to do that and this at the same time.
Out of all of the years, that's the one that's
Yeah.
Can't think of any really special, but there has been times when Bill, well, the year that he went to Guatemala, they announced in church that after the earthquake, they needed help building. So he asked the school board if he could miss the last 2 weeks of school, and they said yes. So thank goodness we had a really good lifeguard, like we've had many times. David and I got camp ready, but that was kind of challenging. So he went to Guatemala for a month to build houses after the earthquake. But we got camp ready. You got home the day before camp started, didn't you?
I got home on Saturday and the campers came along Sunday.
We were ready.
For each of you, where is your favorite spot on camp?
Good question.
My favorite spot, I think down by the lake.
That's mine too. Love the water.
Either that or in our living room.
I love water, but I don't like Bill's suggestion. He said if you like to sit by the water, take your chair in the bathroom, fill a bathtub, and sit by the water. No, there's something missing there.
So Patrick mentioned that you were in Nigeria, and Betty, can you talk a little bit about how did you end up in Nigeria and a little bit of your experience there?
Well, I had always had a desire to be in mission work, I guess. And so when I finished nurses training and got my bachelor's science in nursing, then I decided, or God led me, and it was time to go. So we had a 60-bed hospital that the doctor and I were in charge of, and then we had Nigerian nurses and Nigerian helpers. And it's really sad now to know what's going on with our Christian friends. And sometimes I think, did we help train any of those Boko Haram people? But the Christians have such strong faith, and they are so grateful for what the missionaries were able to help them start schools and hospitals, and it was just a wonderful life. And then you go.
Yeah, the two things I want to talk about here in a moment, but when I graduated from Manchester, I was signed up for BVS for alternative service. 2 years with Brethren Volunteer Service instead of going to the military. And at that time, there were a lot of projects in Europe that were still involved after the horrible destruction from the war. And my goal at that time was to be able to go to Europe and work in projects there. And when project assignments came around, they said I was going to Nigeria, bypassing Europe. And so I went to Nigeria as a teacher in a senior primary school, originally assigned on the west side of EYN, Ecclesia Yanawa, Nigeria, where the brethren are working. 1 week later, they reassigned me, he reassigned me to the east side, to the village of Lassa, where Betty was working. And so we became acquainted there, and 1 year later, we were married in Walker Chapel. Now, two interesting connections with the eastern part of Nigeria. Some of you in the medical field may have heard of the disease Lassa fever. It was on the news again. Does that ring a bell? It was on the news again not too long ago. But Dr. John Hamer, who was the only physician at Lassa Hospital, had a sick missionary that he could not diagnose, couldn't figure it out. And finally he realized that this had been an undiagnosed disease carried by fleas that lived on mice in the tropics. And so that person was taken to Johnson, and she died, and other people died. And this disease is known as Lassa fever, one of the really hot ones in the world today. In fact, the germ from Lassa fever was put in the NASA hot lab that was built in, I think, Atlanta for the moon rocks, when they were going to bring moon rocks back from the Apollo program. The Lassa bug was put in there before they got a chance to put the moon rocks in it. That's how virulent that particular disease was. And it'll pop up again now and then. The other connection, but some of you have heard this story and some of you have not. You remember over a year ago, the 250 or 60 girls from eastern Nigeria that were captured, and most of them have not been heard from since, from the very remote village Chibok. Chibok was 35 miles from Lassa. And Chibok then did not have a senior primary school, which is like a junior high. And at that time, only the boys would go to school. The girls were just beginning to make that step. But there were boys in Chibok that wanted to go to senior primary. And so they would come to Lassa, enroll in school, and find somebody that would let them sleep in a corner in their home so they could go to school. The boys would do their own cooking and take care of themselves, wash their own clothes. And when they ran out of food, they had to go back home to Chibok to get more food for the family. So the junior high boys would leave Lhasa first light on Saturday morning, walk to Chibok, 35 miles, get the food, sleep in the night, leave first thing Sunday morning, walk the 35 miles back to Lhasa, be back by dark, so they could go to school. Now can you imagine junior high boys walking 70 miles in 2 days? That's how much these people valued education and wanted to get ahead. Now, my point is this, our connection, very likely some of the grand relatives of these girls I had in school. And so when we heard the GNA Women's Choir again in Elgin, it was a very, very mental, close connection that Betty and I felt with these people.
Well, I have to tell you, funny, well, I don't know. Anyway, Bill and I have been married 53 years. But when he arrived in Nigeria, we were having what we called Montelisa, which was annual conference for the mission work. And the game of the missionaries was Rook. So the unmarried ones met in a home after the services, and we were playing Rook. And he ended up beside of me. And I had this feeling, he just kept looking at me. Finally I said, is something wrong? He said, yeah, I'm trying to figure you out.
And I'm still working at it.